What really goes on inside the brain of a terrorist? What will the world be like after the coronavirus? Are arms industry staff in government positions? The Muslim View.
Welcome to the first episode of The Muslim View. So what is it? It's a very simple program where every week young Imams and Muslims from around the country discuss the current affairs and give us a Muslim perspective. So what about the format? Well, each participant will give us a 2-minute take explaining a story that they have recently found in the news. The 2-minute takes will follow a 1-minute explanation of the contents of the article being discussed, and then another minute to give us your perspective. So let's get started with our first 2-minute take sent in by Sabah Emdi, where he talks about the brains of potential terrorists.
The piece I'm talking about today is a piece of research conducted by a cognitive scientist called Nafis Hamid, and this piece can be found in the New York Times and it's titled "What I Learned from Scanning the Brains of Potential Terrorists." So scientists noticed that part of our brain lights up when we talk about sacred values which we are ready to die for. So they experimented this on potential terrorists to see what makes them more radicalized, and they realized that when they made them part of a game and slowly excluded them, that particular part of their brain lit up, and they realized that they would actually fight and die for some values which they never even held sacred before. And this in turn meant that they were more willing to die and fight for things which they initially never even held sacred, which again in turn means that when you exclude people from society, they are more willing to use violence to achieve and to fulfill their sacred values. Terrorism is always wrong, whether that's from misguided religious extremists or far-right racists. But studies like this do offer us an opportunity to help prevent such people from ever becoming terrorists. And it tells us that environments in which certain parts of society are marginalized and excluded only because they are different provide fertile ground in which extremist ideas can potentially flourish. So the answer is not to let different beliefs divide us. We don't have to agree with everyone on everything. Rather, it's better to focus on those things that are in common within all of us. This way, where our differences are positive, even if it's not everyone's cup of tea, they can benefit us all. Look, no one is born an extremist or a terrorist. So where we can, we must clamp down on extremists so that they can't spread their evil ideologies amongst people. We should also try to save potentially vulnerable people before their minds are poisoned. And just because they might appear different doesn't give us the right to shun them away. Rather, we should show empathy and care. This is the way to stop people being prone to radicalization. This is in part why our Caliph, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, has called us to build bridges so that we may appreciate many of our rich differences and overcome that which is harmful.
One really interesting article that piqued my interest over the past couple of weeks was by the Financial Times, and it was entitled "The World After Coronavirus." And it raises some really important questions as to how we as a society will deal with the coronavirus. First of all, it poses the question as to what will we choose between. Do we choose between citizen empowerment by giving the information to the people and hoping that they make the right decisions themselves? Or do we choose totalitarian surveillance whereby we have a policing state ensuring people abide by the rules? Secondly, it makes the point that we have to choose between having a nationalistic approach to dealing with the coronavirus or whether we have a global united front in terms of dealing with it. And it ends with stating that there is a need for a global leader. And if we don't have a global leader, it says that we will not only will it be much harder to stop the current pandemic, but its legacy will continue to poison international relations for years to come. Now, for me, this article raises some really important questions, and I think it's a phenomenal article because it states the fact that we don't need to police our people continuously. Of course, there is a need to abide by the rules and there is a need for the police, but by reinstating a trust with policymakers, with politicians, with the media. We can give the people the information that they need to be able to make the right decisions. We don't need the soap police, for example, because of the fact that people know that they need to wash their hands with soap because it's good for them, not out of fear of some sort of punishment. And it's really important because it steers away from this idea of having our nation and our country first, and instead enables people to understand that we need to have a collective approach, that one life lost anywhere is one life too many. We need to work together as a global front in order to tackle issues like this in society.
So the story that has piqued my interest is one from The Guardian from the 18th of March based on a Freedom of Information request that The Guardian made. And the title of the story goes that arms industry staff have been seconded into key roles within the Department for Trade in the UK. And The Guardian reports and says, employees of some of the world's largest arms companies have been on secondments to influential positions within the UK's Department for International Trade. It goes on to say that roles taken those from arms companies on secondment to the department include developing country strategies for industry markets. Now, a spokesperson for the Department of International Trade did say it is not unusual for industry specialists from a wide range of sectors to be seconded into government. However, there are campaigners like Amnesty International who still find this problematic, and they say secondments aren't in themselves improper, but a systematic program of embedding arms industry representatives in government departments smacks of over-coziness. So let's dig into this a bit more. The global arms trade is a huge cause of problems across the world. In fact, the world head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community said something in 2017 that has stuck with me since then, and that was that if there was one thing that governments could change in order to bring about an instant impact upon the peace of the world, it is the curbing of the arms industry. That is how important this particular issue is. But we're seeing that the world is heading in the opposite direction. If we look at some of the facts, on the 9th of March, a research institute published some findings, and they analysed trends over the past 5 years. A comparison of 2015 to 2019 with figures for the years 2010 to 2014 showed that the international arms trade actually grew by more than 5% in that time, and by as much as 20% compared with 2005 to 2009. So in reality, countries are not taking this issue seriously, it seems, and we're heading in the opposite direction. The question is, why is it so? Is it the case that national interest and vested interests are being prioritised over global interests?
Thank you to all the participants for this week's video. If any article has recently grabbed your interest, then please send us your 2-minute take via social media using the hashtag #TheMuslimView. Please remember to use 1 minute to discuss the contents of the article and then another minute to give us your perspective. Thank you for joining us, and please, during these difficult times, stay at home.
The Muslim View.